Okay, hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to the SSH Summer Writing Webinars. I'm Lori Enns and I'm the SSH Writing Center Coordinator at Nazarbayev University, where all students, faculty, and staff are eligible for writing consultations. And to learn more about that, please go to our website. Normally we hold our writing workshops at the university, in a classroom, face-to-face, but as you all know, we can't do that this summer, so we're doing our writing workshops online in the form of these webinars. This is our fourth in our series for this summer, and it's on the well-crafted thesis statement, and our guest speaker is Greg Duran, who's a professor in our department. I'm gonna introduce him later in just 1 minute, because I would like to send out a poll just to find out who's joining us. So right now, I'm just gonna send everybody a poll. And could you please just answer it so we know demographics a little bit? Just going to give you 10 seconds. Great, everybody's voted. Thank you very much. All right, so as I was saying, our special guest speaker is Greg Duran. Greg Duran completed his MA in TESOL at Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. In his professional life, he has occupied two roles. The first as a teacher of English for academic purposes, where he worked at the National University of Benin in West Africa. He also worked at Bilkent University in Turkey, Majan College in Oman, and the American University of Sharjah. In his second role as a journalist, he's worked at newspapers as a feature writer and a copy editor for the San Antonio Express News in Texas, and the Press Enterprise and the Orange County Register, both in California. And I'm sure that he'll draw on those experiences to talk to us today. So I'm going to hand it over to Greg. Please take it away.
Thanks, Lori. Good morning, everybody. So I'm glad that you've joined us today. The thesis statement, as you know from your composition classes, is a really important, if not the most important part of your essay writing experience. And I should be saying, well, we spend so much time studying the thesis statement, and I immediately say, well, let's just see what you can do if you think you know how to do one, and see if that kind of coalesces with what I think. And in general, I think there are some preconceived notions and misconceptions about what a thesis statement does and does not do. In the North American tradition, the thesis statement is a fairly set concept. It comes generally in the introduction of an essay at the end, particularly. So this is, I think you can have a lot of in terms of, you know, how you attempt to approach it. For instance, you can write a nice quotation for a hook to begin it, and choose from a variety of approaches to introduce your essay. But really is hard to negotiate is this idea that the thesis statement comes at the end of the introduction and really is a control center. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the presentation and get started on this. And sorry, oh, I need to share a screen. Sorry, here we go. Share screen. All right. You see that?
Yes, we can see it.
There's a sound effect. I know you're impressed. So the thesis statement, your roadmap to a successful essay, and it is in a lot of ways a roadmap, because it is giving your, I equate it to writing an essay and the things that we do for an essay as sort of helping your reader arrive from point A to point B. And we do a lot of things like transitions, signposts that sort of remind the reader where they are in the essay as well. And the thesis statement is very much part of that as well. So the question is, have you ever received bad directions? New in a town, I'm sure you have. Have you ever given bad directions, even more embarrassingly? If so, you know how frustrating it can be. So again, writing an essay is like giving directions, in that you need to have specific guidelines in order to ensure a smooth arrival to your destination. So let's talk a little bit about some tips about writing a thesis statement. So the first step is to determine what kind of paper you're writing. And in general, we have three types of essays in academic writing. We have the analytical, the expository, which is also called the explanatory, and the argumentative. Now, at NU, we focus on the argumentative essay, which will be the focus of our workshop today, because it is really one of the most commonly used types of university academic writing courses. And I think that the concepts can be applied to just about anything you write, even if you're writing an email. Depending on how convincing you want to be, you need the concepts of introduction, body, conclusion, and interspersed with convincing arguments to make your case. So here we go. So what about an argumentative paper? Now, we use the word argument not in the sense of having a dispute with somebody. You know, you might have a discussion with your roommate over who ate the last yogurt in the fridge, but this is something entirely different. An argument basically is a claim that we make. It is a contention and a point that we would like to prove. So we make this claim about anything, really. Anything can be arguable, any subject, any topic. But what really sets it apart is how we are able to justify the claim by using specific evidence. And you've probably learned about the different types of persuasive appeals in rhetoric, logos, ethos, pathos. So a lot of that will be used in crafting the argument and the claim that you come up with. But this workshop is going to focus on basically the nuts and bolts, what a good thesis statement should look like. So the claim, it can be an opinion, an observation, it can be a very strong recommendation, also known as a call to action. You know, you might be observing problems with the environment and call on local governments to tighten laws on the dumping of garbage. Anything like that. It needs to be something that's not necessarily just an observation. You can make an observation, but there has to be something in an argument anyway that focuses on a specific action that's needed. You want to convince your audience that the claim you've chosen is true, and you're going to be very selective about the evidence that you provide, obviously. So the second step is be specific. Well, really, it's all about limiting the scope. You need to make sure that you have chosen a scope that still allows you to discuss in detail and convincingly what it is that you are focusing on, but that is not going to stray into territories that are not within the limitations of your essay or the topic. So make sure that that you have a very strong focus. And the thing is that focus can change. So be willing to be flexible. So as I discussed earlier, yes, the thesis statement is usually end of the first paragraph of a paper. Now, your particular professor might be more flexible on that. As a writing professor, I generally am not. And I think it's for a good reason. I think it's good training to get in the habit of putting the elements of an essay where probably 90% of the people, or at least English people who read English for their information, academicians and scholars, those people are going to expect it in a certain place. And I think that it's a good service to them to conform to those already accepted standards. So again, as I said before, your focus may change as you write, and so you need to be flexible about revising your thesis. Generally, when I tell students write a thesis statement on the topic, it's kind of goes without saying that it is a working thesis statement, meaning that you are, or a provisional one, if you want to call it that. It's going to change a lot. Sometimes it'll change utterly in a 180-degree direction. I've told students this on many occasions, that if they're doing a research paper, for instance, that there is a good chance that it might be difficult to find the sources that support the claim that you've made, that you've decided to go with in the beginning. So I tell students to be flexible in that, you might find 30 sources that are con or against your claim, and only maybe 5 that are pro or in favor of. So what does a smart student do? A smart student will change their thesis around to argue the opposing point. The point here is actually not about really how you really believe about a topic, but how well you can present the arguments. Think of it kind of like when you were in high school and teachers assigned you a side to debate. You may not have agreed with that side, but it was a very good academic exercise for you to argue a point that you didn't necessarily agree with. So this is where we get to the nuts and bolts of an effective thesis statement. So in general, there are 2 elements. Some thesis statements are more elaborate. They contain something that I call like a lead-in or a counter-argument, but no good thesis statement is without these 2 basic elements, which is the main claim, obviously. So this is kind of like the nerve center, the brain that drives, your essay, the focus, as it were, and what I like to call a forecasting statement. I'm not talking about forecasting weather, but it's kind of like a preview, a sneak preview of what it is, how it is you plan to prove that claim. The forecasting statement will come after the main claim. So let's just talk about the main claim. So as we talked about earlier, the main claim states a bold opinion or call to action. It also sets the stage for the rest of your essay and introduces the support you'll use to prove it. Now, the forecasting statement, this might be a foreign concept to you, but it's fairly simple. It's also called a because clause, because generally you'd say something, let's say a very basic topic, cats make better pets than dogs. Well, why? Because, and then you have to reveal the specific points that you're going to discuss or bring up and elaborate on that prove, at least in your mind, that cats make better pets than dogs. Fairly simple. Remember that there are usually between 2 and 4 points of support in that forecasting statement. The thing is, the magic number tends to be 3. I don't know why it is, but in general, we like things in 3s. So we have 3 body paragraphs, we have 3 forecasting points. Somehow it's a very balanced way to look at things. 2 runs the risk of maybe having 2 equally valuable ideas kind of in opposition to each other. 4 runs the risk of you losing focus, but really between 2 and 4, with the ideally 3 is really fine for most essays. So the forecasting statement also hints at the structure of your essay's body. So if you mention the 3 reasons for preferring cats as pets to dogs as their cleanliness, their sociability, and their trainability, then your sections, or if it's a very short essay, the paragraphs that follow should also be in that order. So if you talk about the 3 points in a certain order and then you go out of order in your essay, yeah, your reader will probably still get the point, but they'll be a little, okay, well, they might say I would have done it this way, or I wonder why they decided to switch up the order. So again, it's these little details that like a roadmap really and directions really matter to your reader, and sort of get in the way of the information that you're trying to convey, which is ultimately the whole point of an essay. So if you list 3 points of support, for instance, which is what I recommend, your reader should expect that there to be 3 main paragraphs in your section, in your essay, sorry, or sections. So let me repeat that. 3 points of support, 3 main body sections. Those can be just solo paragraphs if it's a short essay, or you can block them off with subheadings and have much longer sections, but essentially that's what we're aiming for. So here's an example of a thesis statement that I think is effective, not because I wrote it, but because I think it contains all those things that are really essential to warning and preparing the reader for what's to come in your essay. So let's read this one. College-bound seniors, so I'm talking about high school seniors, you might call them university-bound. In any case, college-bound seniors should consider taking a, quote, gap year. Now, a gap year is common parlance for a year in between high school graduation and the beginning of college, okay? So taking a quote unquote gap year to pursue community service projects, okay? So that is our main claim. And now we have 3 forecasting points, or the because clause. In this case, it's a little different. In order to, number 1, increase their maturity, number 2, expand their global awareness, and 3, to build their job skills base, okay? So we have a thesis statement here that basically is the blueprint for how we are going to write our essay. Again, it's not possible to know with certainty when we write our first thesis statement how that's going to play out, because we might get to our 3rd point and decide, I don't really have enough evidence to make this a full point. So then at that point you change, or you tweak, or you adjust the language in order to meet the needs of what it is you've actually written in your 3rd section or paragraph. But it's good to have at least something that you can go from to get started. I mean, a lot of students say, Professor, I have a hard time, getting started, and I feel like I have writer's block. I say, well, at least, write something that is sort of aspirational, maybe, and then perhaps it will actually happen in this way. I mean, but oftentimes, I change my thesis statements constantly, so you shouldn't be afraid to. So let's unpack the major components of this particular thesis statement. So the main claim, college-bound seniors should consider taking a gap year, okay? So a lot of people feel this way. I think it's a reasonable claim. We're not saying college-bound seniors should take a gap year and go fight in the war in the Middle East, right? I mean, this is something that maybe people wouldn't be so keen to sign up on, but your claim should make a reasonable, maybe make an argument that a reasonable person would generally agree with. Or maybe there's people who are on the fence, but you're not going to have you're not going to come up with a main claim that 95% of the people would be in total opposition to, no matter how convincing you try your claim. So it's real important to kind of strike a good middle ground. So it states a bold opinion, a recommendation, or call to action. In this case, that young people should give back to communities. You know, college will always be there. Why not take a gap year? So it sets the stage for your essay. And note that you should use a strong verb. Okay, so the word should, you know, it's actually a helping verb, but it would be considered a call to action. If we said college-bound seniors must consider taking a gap year, well, that might be a little bit strong, right? Because we're not allowing for much disagreement. But if we say college-bound seniors should consider, we're saying that in our opinion, in our informed opinion, which we will soon tell you why we feel this way, this is a good idea, right? So it's kind of a happy balance, a happy medium. So the support will be found in that forecasting statement we talked about, or a roadmap. It lists the reasons that your reader should agree with you. So here is the support. Number one, to increase their maturity. Number two, to expand their global awareness. And number three, to build note about this. This is well done, because things that I like to see students do is to make their three forecasting points parallel. And parallelism, basically, you understand from math concepts, but in essays, it's about using similar language when you're doing a list, right? So you're going to say to increase their maturity. If you said to increase their maturity, it expands their global awareness, and by the way, it builds their job skills base too, right? Well, I mean, that gets the point across, but it doesn't read as smoothly as having verbs like increase, expand, and build as the main stems of those forecasting points. So just keep that in mind as well. Again, this is when you get to the point where you're really polishing your thesis statement. So here's point one, there's point two, and they're both. So interestingly, you could, if you're writing a very short essay, you could visualize it like this. The pattern would look very similar. It's all in the same order. You notice that the brown colored forecasting point corresponds to the first paragraph, body paragraph, etc., etc. This is an order of the points that you've pre-established in your essay, in your forecasting point, and it's a really good idea for you to use in your. So this gives you a little more illustration. See how that works? Okay. Lori, are there any questions that we can answer that have come in yet? Otherwise, we'll go right to the workshopping part of this.
Yeah, so everybody, you should know that if you have some questions, some specific questions, you can send them to us through the chat. And then we will have a look at them, and then Professor Duran will answer them. I think maybe, why don't you go ahead and do your little activity? And we didn't warn people that we were going to take questions. So yeah, if you have any specific questions,
okay,
or just let us know.
Okay, great. All right, so let's try our hand at writing a thesis statement. So get your smartphones or your laptops ready. When you have done this, I'll ask that you send them in the text, in the chat, so that I can copy paste them. I won't include your name if you want some anonymity, and so that we can sort of see what you've done with your attempt. So the first task is for you to choose one of these topics. So the first topic would be that you can choose from would be too much money is a bad thing. Okay. Number 2 would be we need more women in power. And number 3 would be all students should study abroad. Okay, so choose one of those. And your first job here is to write down 3 reasons why you think one of these topics or these assertions really might be true. Now note that they're already kind of in the form of a thesis statement, right? They make a claim, they're bold, they kind of have a call to action. So you can really use these as your thesis statement. If you want, you can do some rewording if you want to be a little more specific, but these work as main claims for thesis statements. What you need to do is provide the 3 reasons why you think these might be true. Of course, we don't know until you've actually done the work of fleshing out and writing your draft, if the reasons you come up with right now would still apply by the end of your paper. But again, it's a starting off point. It's a way of getting your juices flowing, as it were. So go ahead and give those a try. So again, choose either number 1 or number 2 or number 3 and come up with 3 reasons. I'll give you guys, what, 10 minutes to work on this? And then when you've come up with what you think is an okay thesis statement, go ahead and copy paste it and put it into the chat function and shoot it at us, and then I'll do the same and we'll go over it.
Greg, while students are thinking and writing, we have a question.
Sure.
So this student is asking, is it normal to have a both side essay, not only one side? So I'm guessing what she's asking is, can you have an essay that basically doesn't come down on one side, doesn't give stronger arguments for one side, but gives sort of a more balanced look at 2 sides, like both sides of an issue? Now, I'm guessing that's not for the 150 class. Maybe that might be an essay or a paper for a different purpose. So if you're a student in 150,
yeah, I mean,
yeah, definitely in 150, those instructors want people to come down on one side, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we focused on the argument essay precisely for that, because it does require you to take a position. Even, in other forms, like I've taught the compare and contrast essay, I still ask students to come up with, even though you're comparing and contrasting, it's still a lot more meaningful for the reader for you to focus and for you to prefer even slightly one of the 2 that you are, or at least, talk more favorably about a certain thing that you're comparing and contrasting. So we want objectivity in the sense that, you're only going to use objective facts, but your paper will not have, much of a focus if you don't take one side. And the thing is that we also have something called the counter arguments section in the basic argument essay, which allows you to explore, which really requires you to actually to predict what someone disagreeing with your point of view might say, as a way to sort of cut people off at the pass and say, hey, I've thought about all the ins and outs of this, and here's why, yes, I've considered the opposing view, but here is why I still think that my opinion or view or slant on this topic is still the best one. Mm-hmm. Good question.
We have another question, actually, while we're waiting. Maybe we can take this one too. Nurbeck writes, how many times shall I revise my thesis statement to ensure that I have a thesis with crystal clear clarity? How many times do people usually go back?
How many times? Oh, gosh, I don't know, maybe 150, 200? No. There's no hard and fast answer for that. I mean, some people I hate them, but there you go. Some people are able to craft a thesis statement that is perfect and crystal clear the first time they try, right? These people are, I think, are not human though. In all seriousness, revision is the biggest part of writing an essay. So as much as you revise your body paragraphs and your introduction and your conclusion, some people even tweak the title of their essay several times because they're just not sure it really encompasses. As many times as you do that, you're probably going to be doing that with your thesis statement as well. Really, it all depends on how much your body paragraphs evolve over time as you're writing the thesis. So I'm writing the essay. So again, just make sure that by the end that your thesis statement matches what it is you have in your essay. That was a good question. Did we freeze?
We didn't freeze. We have a thesis that we should actually look at. I'm just
okay.
trying to
Let's see
get it
here.
to you. Okay. Maybe I can try to. So I think we should look at this one.
Where would I find that? Is that in the more in the chat?
It's in participants. So maybe I can try to share my
Ah,
screen.
okay, by Daria, I think, right?
So the excessive amount of money is possessed by an excessive amount of money possessed by individuals is because it could corrupt young minds, lead to uncertainty about a person's place in the world, and da 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 da.
Okay.
So we should that one.
Yeah, let's see. Let's put that one. Okay, so everybody can see that?
Yes.
Okay. So the excessive amount of money possessed by individuals is because it could corrupt young minds, lead to uncertainty about person's place in the world. Okay, so we've got 2 points. That's not bad for a few minutes of brainstorming. So let's just take it apart here. Let's unpack it. The excessive amount of money possessed by individuals. So the first thing we need to do is run a test on this. Does this claim, is it clear, and is it a call to action, or is it a clear opinion? I'm wondering. The excessive amount of money possessed by individuals. So I guess the idea here is that the person writing this believes that excessive says it all, but in fact, I'm not sure it's clear. We can say something is excessive without necessarily, it does have sort of a negative connotation to it, but we need to be probably a little bit clearer. So I wonder how we might do this. Maybe we would say something like, I'm just going to spitball here. So we'd say maybe people, and try to retain the same language, but just sort of redo it a little bit. How about people who possess excessive amounts of money so we have the subject now. So we know that it's not just any individual, but it's certain individuals. We've been more specific, but we still don't have a call to action. We still haven't talked about why we're even talking about people who are rich or have a lot of money, right? So people who possess excessive amounts of money. Let's go back to the example from the sample thesis statement where we recommended that college students should take a gap year. So maybe we can say should. People who possess excessive amounts of money should. Okay, that's a start, but what should they do? What do you think they should do, Lori?
So I'm thinking even the word
Give it to us, right?
Nurbeck says donate. That's a good, thank you. So I think even the word excessive suggests that's a value judgment. So if you're saying people are possessing excessive amounts of money, that's already you giving a value judgment, showing that you think it's too much. So I think maybe maybe one thesis could be people who possess more than a certain amount of money, or I don't know how you might want to phrase that. People who possess more than they need to live comfortably in the world should consider, donating to, an organization for, that gives some sort of relief here. They should consider, I don't know, there's two other things. So yeah, so people who possess a certain.
But we should have maybe one controlling claim and then maybe some specific areas that they can focus on for the proof. So maybe a general claim would be people who, like I said, I'm going to try to keep it with their own language because we understand what they mean. People who possess excessive amounts of money should maybe be careful, right?
Okay, we've actually got a good chat going here.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yep,
Do
go
we
ahead.
have any other suggestions?
Find the rate of benefiting themselves in society. Right. Okay, so this person is saying, well, try to say something about doing something good in society, both for yourself and for the world. Also, somebody is saying that some people, it limits perception of the world. Okay, for some people, having too much money is a bad thing because it limits one's perception of the world's problems, leads to them adapting to a certain comfort zone, and limits their willingness to be in a less prosperous environment. So I think that's something we could work with. Okay. So that is under. Do you mind if we say?
I will go grab that one, but let's finish this one. Maybe let's say maybe people who possess excessive amounts of money should maybe we could say should have a plan for spending it, including, what were some of those things? Giving it to charity.
Mm-hmm.
What was another thing that students said?
So general things like benefiting themselves in society. So, but if we wanted to get more specific, giving it to charity, investing in. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say maybe making sound investments. I mean, again, I mean, yes, the money could go to charity, but I mean, there's also the danger to the person possessing excessive amounts of money in that, as that proverb goes, a fool and his money are soon parted, right? So, it doesn't, the money doesn't do anyone any good if the person having it loses it, right? So making sound investments might be a good point. And so have a plan for spending at charity, making sound investments, and maybe using it for the happiness of others. Maybe. Of course, we know that, first thing people do is buy a 20-room mansion and a yacht and go to Tahiti. But let's take a look at the other. Let's see here. What else have we got here? We've got lots of stuff. Oh, let's go to the one about studying abroad. There we go. And they've even numbered it for us for ease of use. So that's kind of nice. All right. Toggling between these screens is not always I'm finding a strong point, but I think we got it here. Okay,
Okay.
so all students should study abroad because, so again, the numbers are nice, but we wouldn't use them in an actual thesis statement, so I'm just gonna, but it's nice that you've made that overt. And you can do that in your, you can do that when you are writing your draft. All students should study abroad because increase of intercultural relationships, gaining educational experience, exploring new regions can inspire for new achievements. Okay, well, these are nice. There are 3 distinct forecasting points, which I like. But there's one thing that I would change or that I would use to improve this one, and that is the concept of parallelism. We talked a little bit about that, right? So I'm gonna, parallelism, can I spell that? Parallelism, okay. So how do we make these forecasting points more parallel, meaning make them smoother on the reader's eyes to read and make them sort of trip off the tongue rather than sort of make you rethink. So all students should study abroad because, great, we have the because clause used there. Maybe, how about they will, maybe they would, sorry. Let's use that kind of as our template. All students should study abroad because they would increase intercultural relationships. So now we have a verb in the infinitive form. They would increase. They would gain, right? So we need to change this one to an infinitive form as well. They would increase intercultural relationships. They would gain educational experience, and simple as that. Explore new regions. Okay. Now, this part is very nice, but it's not, doesn't fit in with the parallelism that we set up, right? Because we already have 2 points that say increase intercultural relationships, gain educational experience, and explore new regions. So we could really just kind of cut it off there if we wanted to. You could maybe even incorporate it. So maybe we could just copy it here. We could say all students should study abroad as inspiration. I believe in recycling, Lori. As many of the thoughts and ideas,
I can see you.
They're generally good, but sometimes they're not in the right place. So we just figure out a place. Just think of me as, you know, an interior decorator for thesis statements.
Yes, I can see you being very faithful to the words.
So yeah, it's all about, you know, feng shui. So all students should study abroad as inspiration for new achievements because we have a little bit of problem with pronouns here. Actually, the studying abroad is an it, so let's fix that. All students should study abroad as inspiration for new achievements because it would increase intercultural relationships, gain educational experience, and ooh, we have a problem here. So that doesn't work. Let's keep it there. How about if we just put students?
Students should study abroad.
Even though we repeat the word students. Maybe we can specifically say undergraduates so as not to repeat. Have we fixed it yet? All undergraduates should study abroad as inspiration for new achievements because students would increase intercultural relationships, gain educational experience, and explore new regions. So I think that is really not a bad thesis statement. And I think that, I agree with it. So score. We have a score here.
You could also
Do we
take
have
it,
another one?
if you were okay with taking out the because, you could say all undergraduates should study abroad as inspiration for inspiration for new achievements, to increase intercultural relationships, to gain educational experience, and to explore new regions. You could use
Even
a
better.
to instead of because.
Even
We
better.
do have one on women in power, which I thought was a different piece of content. So this is in the
Okay.
Q&As. So
All right, let
you
me
see in
find
the
it.
Q&As, women are more responsible and do everything earlier. Numbers of women in power are more or less than men.
I'm not seeing that. When did that one come through? What time?
Okay, so I'll send it. So it's in Q&A. Let me just do this here.
Oh. It's where we have like two different,
yeah, we do. It's a bit confusing.
it's a bit confusing.
So we need more women in power because women are more responsible and do everything earlier.
I see that. Yeah. Women are just better people, let's be honest. Okay, so let's just save, oops, I need to X out of that, share the screen again. Oh boy. I wish there was a smoother way to toggle, but okay. We'll work with what
You're doing
we have.
great.
So,
Greg.
huh?
You're doing great. Toggling.
So the original thesis statement was something like what? More women should be in power, right? More women should be in power because. So we can just say maybe they are more responsible and do everything earlier.
Act earlier.
I'm not sure about that. Numbers of women in power are more or less than men, gender equality, and numbers of women believe in themselves will go up. Okay, so we got a few good reasons here, I think. I think that if I were thinking this through, I might come up with reasons that might not be, that would not necessarily be bulletproof in terms of disagreement, but would be less likely to be disagreed with because they're not really requiring readers to question maybe strongly held beliefs, for instance. Like if you're, generally I ask students to avoid issues like, religion and things that, people are not easily going to change their minds about. In this case, basically what you need to do is just present examples of where women have been leadership, have shown leadership outside of the realm of maybe elected office, that would translate well to being in power, right? So because they're more responsible, right? Maybe you could say maybe they have shown themselves, this is going to get wordy now, to be responsible in other areas, maybe. Then we would get more, we'd get more specific, right? I don't know about the do everything earlier part. So I'm just gonna forget about that one. There's a limited redecorating, right, Lori? So sometimes we just need to get rid of some furniture.
It's true. Yeah.
The numbers of women in power are more, so are basically what she's saying here, I think, is that there is a discrepancy, the word I'm looking for, maybe, or yeah.
They have shown themselves to be responsible in areas.
Or we could say maybe women are underrepresented. Women are there we go, underrepresented.
And that's more parallel
in
too.
Leadership roles. Yeah, I don't even think about parallelism until I've actually gotten the ideas out, and then I go, oh, what corner have I painted myself into here? Women are underrepresented in leadership roles, and numbers of women believing in themselves go, oh, okay. So what I think that's talking about is like the importance of having role models, right? That's how I read it as. So we could say maybe maybe women in power will be
An inspiration or
will serve as crucial role models to young girls. How about that?
okay.
So let's see if this passes all the tests. So is there a strong main claim? Yes, there is. More women should be in power. Okay. Is there a because clause or a forecasting statement? Looks like it, because that's what most of it is. Because, number one, they have shown themselves to be responsible in other areas, okay, such as motherhood on the job, other organizational talents. Number two, women are underrepresented in leadership roles, which nobody can deny. And number three, women in power will serve as crucial role models to young girls. Okay, it's not super parallel, but I think it does the job. I think that we can. That the idea is that you want to get something out there as a working or provisional thesis statement, as much as you can, and then use that as the jumping off board for getting your paper started. And then when you go back, you can polish and refine and tweak and do all those things that make a thesis statement such a welcome component of a paper.
Yeah, I think it's a good draft thesis, something to start with. So
Yes,
we are
exactly.
running out of time.
Okay. So, well, thank you, Lori, for this opportunity to share my ideas, and I hope that thank you to the students and spectators who tuned in. I hope it was helpful.
Yes.
It was a pleasure doing so. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to Greg for being our speaker and for leading this discussion. This is something that we need to revisit, no matter how what level you are as a writer. We really need to go back and look at our theses, just to make them a little bit better. For more information, please go to our website. You can sign up for a one-on-one writing consultation in the Writing Center, and we'll see you again in our next webinar. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.